Good evening, guys, and thank you for coming to the January 4th, 2020 business meeting. Can you all please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are joined by 6 of our board members, our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney, our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, Dr. Ted Fulton, our interim assistant superintendent for finance and operations, Mr. Luis Montero, our district legal counsel, our district clerk, Mr. Campinetti, and our student rep, unfortunately, is not here at this time. There are a few announcements. There are 2 opportunities for the community to participate during the board of the meeting. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows disposition of all agenda items. If you'd like to speak tonight, you must be an eligible speaker. Anyone who is a resident of the school district can please come up to the podium. If you are not a resident, you must be voted by the majority of the board. The normal allotted time is approximately 3 minutes. For the convenience of the community, all Bay Port Blue Point Board of Education meetings are live streamed and posted thereafter to the district website. And as always, if you'd like to follow the school on Twitter, you can follow the school at BBP Schools, or you can follow Dr. Harney at BBP Soup. Before we get into our discussion for the night, we'd like to open it up for any community new or community old business. We just ask that you come to the mic, state your name, if you're from Bay Port or Blue Point. Not hearing any, we will turn over to Dr. Harney for our superintendent report. Dr. Harney?
Good evening, thank you, Mr. Miller. First, happy 2022 to everybody. Hope everyone had a great holiday. Just a couple of things I want to go through, then I'll kind of talk about all the new stuff that kind of came out over the break. So first of all, I do hope that everyone had a nice relaxing holiday and everyone is feeling well and being safe. First, I really would like to thank Mr. Weber and the entire music department since our last meeting, we had a number of concerts that played for all of our schools, the elementary, middle school, and high school. And myself and Dr. Fulton, we got to attend, Mr. Montero, we got to attend a number of them, and they really were outstanding. The kids did an outstanding job. I thought they sounded terrific, so I really would just like to thank Mr. Weber and the whole music department for everything that they did. And it was great to see the kids back in person again, so that was awesome. Also, as a continuation, we were able to, right prior to the break, you probably received a couple of emails from me. One was about that we will still be live streaming events, especially the middle school and high school sports through the winter right now. We started it with the concerts as well, and if we have any other additional, we have the jazz concert coming up here for the high school, we will do that as well. So we'll continue to do that for people. I know people were very appreciative of that, so we'll continue that. Really just kind of, I'll give you an update on a couple of things. If we could just take a couple of minutes here is, so over the break, there were a number of things that came out related to, COVID and quarantines and isolation. So I'm going to kind of do something here. Is a lot of times when people are talking about an isolation or a quarantine, they use the words interchangeably. I'm going to use them in this way. When we talk about an isolation, it's really due to a positive case, where quarantine really relates to a close contact. Okay, so those are the 2 words. The reason I bring that up is because at one point, the CDC had come out and saying that there would be a 5-day quarantine if a person was vaccinated and they had tested positive. Just so, and I know I have written in this previous letters, but the way it works is CDC always comes out with their guidance, and then what happens is each state agency, for us that's the New York State Department of Health, reviews those guidelines or mandates or whatever you want to call them. I'll go through that. And then once they do that, then each local health department will do the same. So for example, CDC does their thing, New York State Department of Health will do theirs, and then each county has their local health department. So then Suffolk County would then do theirs, so they would review that. So when people have heard about the 5-day quarantine for via the CDC, that is something that New York State has not adopted yet. What New York State did adopt was for essential workers, whether it be healthcare workers, They have deemed school personnel as emergency workers as well, so within the schools, and that does not apply to students in school, it's really the people working in the schools, and the idea again was so that they could keep schools open, that was the idea. So as of right now, no, I will tell you this, I do know that the New York State Department of Health is looking at it across the board, but that has not been finalized yet. So as of right now, when it comes to an isolation, which again means on off a vaccinated person, if they were tested positive, every person is still a 10-day isolation period, and then if somebody is an emergency personnel, it's a 5-day. But with that, they have to meet certain criteria as well that they'll have to. And we have a list of, I'll call it criteria that we need to follow to make 5 or 6 for that person to return safely for everybody. So that is something. So that is something that people have heard about. You may have also heard about this thing called test to study. That is something else that the CDC has come out with. Now, I will say this, that again, everything follows the same process. New York State Department of Health looked at it, and again, there's a litany of criteria there. Suffolk County Department of Health has recently looked to do that as well. Now it falls upon school districts. But to do that, the criteria is very specific. One, as of right now, and again, as I say this, it's as of 7:05 tonight, these things, as you know, kind of change very frequently. A test to study for a district to implement this has to be a couple of things. One, the district has to have a policy. So this happened over the break. So as a district, we do not have a policy at this time. It takes time to create a policy. So that's something that we will work on. Two, once you do that, you have to figure out how you would have to implement it. Because the one thing it does do, there's very specific criteria for test to study in terms of how the test is given, who's given the test, how do you verify who the test is being given to. It's very different than the test kits that we were given to the district, and I'll talk about that in a second. So that is something. So there's still a lot of work to do with that. So that is something more of a logistical piece that all districts are going to have to take a look at. On Long Island, I do not know of a district yet that is implemented, mainly because you have to do the policy and you have to figure out how you would actually do it. With the test to study, as for close contact, who is non-vaccinated, this is what becomes very confusing at times. What would happen is they would have to test 3 times over 7 days. So that's something that they had talked about. And so this is something as a district that we still have to investigate with it. So you may have heard about that as well. The third thing you heard about, and it was probably, I know some of these emails I received from the state were either Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, or whatever, maybe they seem to come at those times, was the testing. You had heard the government talk about at one point that they were looking to do all testing prior to everyone returning on January 3rd across the New York State. I think once they figured out the magnitude of that, they realized that that would be very, very difficult to do. And they knew that tests were very difficult for people to come by. So when we had found out about that, I had sent an email, a letter out to everyone, probably the middle of the week last week, basically just saying this is what the governor was talking about and this is what they were looking to do. At that time, I even had put that I was looking to do a survey about who may want the test. The idea is they were giving us one test based off of our beds numbers from last year. So, so they basically looked at your number and said, okay, this is the amount of tests that you would get. So our school district was right around 1,900 thereabouts. But soon that, because we did not have the test at that time, and then it turned out on New Year's Eve, we were able, as our district, and that other district was able to do this, we were able to obtain the test on that time. So at that point, we determined on New Year's Eve that actually, the New Year's Day we came in and we kind of figured out that on January 2nd, which was Sunday, that we would try and figure out a way to disseminate the test. I am very lucky to be working in a district like I do. You saw many of the board members out there, many staff who volunteered their time to kind of help us out so we could do this kind of community event, so I'd like to thank everybody for that. But so that means on Sunday, we were able to disseminate a little bit over 800 tests to people who wanted them. And the idea was so that people could try to test so that if we could kind of keep the spread the positive spread outside of the district. And then we had done a second one last night. And again, thank you to everyone who volunteered. We had done about another 300 tests last night. So out of the 1,900 or so, we have disseminated 1,100 so far. There are probably people who are going to be listening and said, yes, I would still like to get a test. I didn't get one because these are from the students. What we'll do in the next day or so, we'll get some of the tests down to the buildings so that if people want them there, they'll be able to get them. Again, the idea is that people couldn't find the tests, that they were being disseminated to us so that we could share with the community. So really, I'd just like to thank everybody for that. So that's kind of where we are in terms of the updates, in terms of all the testing and quarantining and isolation that people have been hearing. I'll continue to share the information as it comes out to myself. As I said, there is a rumor right now that now that New York State is talking about changing the isolation period for everybody, so who are vaccinated and who test positive, but that again we're still waiting on that. So other than that, I'll open it up to the board first to see if you have any questions about any of that stuff. But again, I really just would like to thank everybody for all their help.
Thank you, Dr. Horner. Any questions from trustees? Not hearing any. Thank you so much, Dr. Horner. We will skip our student delegate report. Just one quick update for the community. At this time, Ms. Byrne, our drug trustee, has chosen to resign for personal reasons. When the trustee chooses to resign, there's really three choices the Board of Education has. One is a special election. The second one is to appoint somebody. And the third one is to continue on as a 6-member board to the next election. So I'll open it up to the board right now for any consideration what we'd like to see out of those three options.
I'm for option just to basically go with 6 members until this May's election. I think if you do a special election, that's going to be upwards of $10,000 just for one seat, where the member would only get an additional couple of extra months. I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer dollars. And for us to appoint, I don't like that idea either. I think that members of the Board of Education should be elected by the community as a majority or as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other trustees with comments?
Mr. Miller, I also agree with Mr. Johnson. We will hold off until, keep the seat vacated until the election.
Thank you, Mr. Krug. Any other trustees? Ms. Sorrell?
Sorry. I'd like to go along with what has been said so far, and I'm in full agreement of holding off and keeping it as such.
Any other comments? Not hearing any, we will continue to, as a Board of Education with 6 members, and obviously this election next May will be 4 members, just so everyone's aware. There will be 4 members that are for election in May, or 4 seats open.
Mike, we want to just clarify what that means as far as how long when the seat will be elected and how long that seat.
Yeah, so Ms. Byrne was supposed to be up in next June. Unfortunately, if she's going to resign, that means that whoever is going to be running for this seat in May, from Ms. Byrne's seat, it would only be for 1 year. It would to complete her term. So Ms. Byrne's seat will be a 1-year seat, so there will be 4 seats up for election in May. 3 seats will be for 3 years. 1 seat will be for 1 year. 4 seats total. Good question, Mr. Johnson. Any other questions about the 4 positions that are up in May? Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items the board would like to remove from the consent agenda and place on the regular agenda? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items E, F, G, H, I, and J? Mr. Brodsky, second. Mr. Krug, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We do not have any items on the regular agenda tonight, so we will go to closing communications and open it up for any community members who'd like to come up to the podium for any questions for the board or for the superintendent. Not hearing any, we will move it to trustee new business. Any trustees with any questions or concerns that want to bring before the board? Mr. Johnson.
I guess I wanted to bring this up last month, but we never got the opportunity with the meeting ending abruptly. We've got several emails from parents regarding, I've been approached several times by different parents about two different things involving programs. About the ability to maybe have a 7th grade baseball team. I'm being told that there's cuts at the middle school level. I do know, just remember when I was in 7th grade, that's pretty early to start making athletic cuts, and that's something that we can research. I don't know if there's any other sports that do that at that level. My other thing was we do have a varsity swim team that joins up with Sable, but I'm told we have a middle school team, and I don't know the reasons behind it, and I kind of look at it as like, well, if we've already partnered with them at the high school level, why are we not allowing the girls and the boys at the middle school level to do the same? And I think it would be, to gain that additional experience. So these are two things that I wish I could have brought to your attention, Dr. Barney, to look at for us for this past vacation. I'm hoping it's not too late with the spring coming up, approaching fast, but I know there's a cost associated with these things, but it's really not a significant cost. And I just think that nobody should be deterred from a sport, especially in 7th grade, when they have a lot more time to physically and mentally develop. High school is a different situation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Dr. Harney?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Johnson. So I guess my question is, and I think you answered it, is this something that you're not necessarily looking at for the next budget cycle? You're looking for me to investigate for this coming spring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, obviously, if the budget for this present year is that tight,
Okay.
and then that's a whole different scenario. But there's probably more story. Is it only 7th grade baseball that does this? Is it basketball as well? Because if it's only baseball, I think it becomes there's an issue. It becomes an easier situation. Obviously, if it's several sports, then it's something that we need to evaluate. But there's a lot for you and your athletic department to look into and provide us with data. And I just wanted to get that communicated as early as possible. Cost, what other sports there are that have a similar situation, whether or not we want to look into that. Like I said, it's been something we've been emailed about for a while. It's something that I get fielded questions on regularly. So I think it's something that I'm interested in looking into.
Okay, I will do that for you, and I can even ask Mr. Mullins to put something together for us so that we can take a look at that. I do believe it's probably more than just the baseball, because I do know there are other sports where one of the best things about baseball is we have a lot of people who have a lot of interest in being part of the extracurricular in the sports. So I'll take a look at that, because then I would say if we look at one, we would need to look at the entire picture. So I'll do that for you.
Thank you, Dr. Harney. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any other trustees with new business? Not hearing any, can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Krug, second.
Second.
All right, there's Mr. Borowski, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate it. Have a great day, guys.